what an impressive place.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Got here. And yeah, let's start off with telling us where we sit.
Yeah. Well, right now we're in the Moment Megafactory 1. We unveiled this very recently. With a ton of our friends and family, which is super exciting. It's kind of the next era here in the greater Vancouver region in Surrey, British Columbia, where, yeah, majority of our team members today sit, bringing together experts from across the world, from Europe, from the United States, from Canada, all to do battery manufacturing here.
Good stuff. It's been so we recorded an episode with Summary 18 months ago, just after the Series 8.
Yeah.
So I guess that feels like 5 years ago, 10 years ago now. A lot has changed. I think at the time the Series A had happened, the DOE grant had happened as well. So yeah, summarize what has happened.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, especially during that Series A timeline, that was co-led by Voyager Ventures and Amazon. So they've been great supporters, and they continue to double, triple down as we continue to scale, which has been really exciting, both from the commercial standpoint as well as from the investor side as well. So since then, yeah, we raised our and closed our Series B approximately 16 months right after that. We scaled our team from around 40 people to around 60, kept building more, designing new systems, uh, got the system kind of right behind you to become the first and only uh, energy storage system that is repurposed to be fully certified and check all those certification boxes. And for us, it was really important because safety is so important. And it wasn't just safety of our customers, but it's also safety of our employees. And we see ourselves as, the role model to make sure that the entire industry stays safe. So once we achieved all of our technical milestones, we've just been deploying, which has been super exciting. So we're one of the only companies that have actually deployed to on-grid customers where, of course, they purchase the systems for us. We don't get to tell them how they utilize our batteries, and it's on-grid because we're certified to do so. So um, it's been a great journey because we deploy in really critical infrastructure locations. So airports, hospitals, places where, hopefully we get to make the jobs of some of our heroes, such as, doctors' lives easier by providing them uninterruptible power.
You mentioned safety being the foundational value that you have, which I learned yesterday in the onboarding training with the group of new starters. I'll get to that in a second, but I wanted to mention the garage or the garage, shall we say? That garage. So I mean, when starting up there, could you ever have imagined this?
Yeah, we have started in that garage, January 2020. Um,
Just for COVID.
Yeah, just before COVID, 3 months before COVID lockdowns here in Canada. Um, and it was actually here in Surrey, British Columbia. So it was in half a garage in Serene's garage, who you spoke with. We feel really fortunate because back in the day, the only rent we had to pay was to promise that we'd clean up that garage. Um,
It took a while, I understand.
it did took a while. It took a long while. But it was the least we could do to at least have our family support us in terms of just giving us a place to work out of. And I always also joke that we only got half a garage. Steve Jobs was lucky enough to get a full one. Real estate's much more expensive nowadays. But yeah, we bought a Nissan Leaf battery pack from a local auto wrecker. We disassembled it in this garage, the four of us. And luckily, we all have engineering backgrounds. We tested these batteries, made sure they're safe, reassembled them into stationary energy storage, and then we rented a Hertz vehicle. Now, around this time of all of us in the day calling customers and then at night building the systems, um, that was when, of course, COVID hit. So it was March 2020. The news was telling us even if we touched, we poked a friend, we would die. So like we were all, scared, evidently. We had masks on and everything. It was a very challenging moment for us to even start a hardware company, let alone a battery company in this garage. And then from there, we built it. Uh, Hertz that year was actually going through a bankruptcy restructuring. So They luckily actually upgraded us. I was pretty cheap. We actually had no money. That was the main reason why. We rented like uh, a Toyota RAV4, but then they luckily upgraded us to a Toyota Highlander. And then by the time we loaded our batteries into this back of this rental, we realized, oh, it actually barely fit. And we were really lucky that it got upgraded. And then from there, we drove it 24 hours. Uh, the co-founders to Winnipeg for our very first sale. We got there. Of course, it was our very first project. Um, we got there really late. It was 8 or 9 p.m. It was all dark out. And we wanted to make the system look even better than when it was at home. So we just spent all night, making it look better. Then we went to the next morning, we deployed this project at the CHTTC. And yeah, it's been incredible since. The system's still up. The system it does a really great job with connecting with hydrokinetic turbines, so river turbines, with solar, with even the grid, to provide renewable energy.
Amazing. All built from a garage,
Yeah.
transport 24 hours, tinkering in the dark.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually why every single time, of course, all of our facilities had a small office and then a warehouse manufacturing floor. Our team jokes that, this is the garage and the garage just keeps growing. Um, and even to me, like as we scale into this facility and bigger facilities into the future, I'll still always think, uh, I always still feel that we're still in a garage, and that we need to be as scrappy and um, be as thankful for the team members who've joined us and the path that we've gone through today.
Well, the space, the facilities have scaled. We'll talk about the culture as well and maybe how that has changed and evolved amongst other things. But I wanted to mention something that I observed on the onboarding training yesterday with the group of new starters, like I think 6 or 7 of us, and UN. I was really impressed. I was surprised, but really impressed by what he talks about your struggles with mental health, and it actually inspired what would initially Mo and meditate, um, I found really interesting. And you don't often see that approach from CEOs. I feel like in terms of that showing that vulnerability, that human side of yourself figure. I was like, wow, for these new starters to hear this and to actually have that, I've no doubt but feel closer to you because of that, feel that connection. Uh, so I thought it was really brave, really good. I heard that before from a CEO. So
Thank you.
yeah, do you mind sharing a little bit about your story?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, myself, back in my first year of engineering, as most engineers, lawyers, whatever occupation, really, they honestly throw a lot of shit at you. And at that time, I'd gone through depression in my first year, trying to balance school, balance a relationship at the time, as well as balance my family, and it was just real a lot. And through that jump, I feel really lucky to have gone out of that state and had never been back in it again. But how I did that was not out of luck. I think, um, especially in my last few years of engineering, things were actually ramping up even further. We, rather than taking 7 courses a semester, we were taking 9. And then, and I really asked myself, like, and told myself, like, I really do not ever want to be back in that position again. How do I find tools to cope with stress and my mental health? And for me, I got really lucky. I got lucky through meditation. For me, it was very simple. We were connecting on this a little bit as well. I used Headspace, you used Calm, right? And it worked. It worked for me. And every morning at 6 a.m., I would be at school in that library. I know exactly where I sat. Meditated for 30 minutes. Went to school, did my work up until 5 p.m. Transited home for an hour. Got home at 6, and then from 6 to 12 p.m. to 12 a.m., I would still be in a coffee shop studying, and then I rinse and repeat every single day. And to this day, actually, I'd say that was my least stressful year of my entire life because, I just prepared myself and, you know, the brain and mental health is just another muscle, just like going to the gym. So that's super important to practice meditation. So at that time, I just found like, oh my God, I found the cure to depression. Like, this is amazing. Why doesn't everybody else do it? Um, and around this time as well, this was 2019. Myself, Gigs, Marine Gurmesh, all of us, we were all very passionate about mental health. So we were really looking at, okay, well, meditation could be a cure to depression. Like, why don't we do this? And what we found out is actually it's a lot harder than it seems. Some people think the voices on these apps are annoying, so they can't really focus on these guided meditation sessions. Or it's just really difficult to sit down and clear your mind, right? Um, so from that point on, we really wanted to solve depression and mental health as four engineers, four robotics engineers, but just passionate about the problem. And from there, we actually saw in the market um, a lot of back then your Apple Watch couldn't and your Garmin couldn't tell you when you're stressed. So devices that telling you that you were stressed were actually innovative back in the day. So you put a little headband on, and then on your screen it'll show a stormy cloud if you're stressed and whatnot. But from our perspective, having a device tell me if I was stressed or not was not necessarily the solution. We wanted to really find a technology where it would help intervene with helping you with mental health. So for us, we started Moment Meditate, which was a neuroscience company um, working on uh, essentially a neurostimulation device that would help you get into your mindfulness state better and easier. So that's be it meditation, journaling, going for a walk, whatever helps you get into that mindfulness state, it would help you do that. Um, from there, we built the technology in 8 months. We then started the company Moment Meditate incorporated. That was fun. We're first time founders there. Found 800 customers, all willing to pay about $3,000 each. So around that time, we're like, oh my God, we found product market fit.
Made it.
Yeah, we made it. This is it. But then we realized, it would have been $4 million and more importantly, 4 years of FDA before we could legally sell anything. And we really asked ourselves around that November, December timeframe of 2019, are we the team to do this? Because in the end, we're not doctors, we're not psychologists. Yes, we're technical enough to build the technology, but maybe we're not, the founder market fit was not there. So we asked ourselves that for a couple months and we said, no, we were probably not. But to this day, that's what builds the culture at Moment. Because we were founded and the funny answer is the why did we keep moments and why we call moment energy is because, oh, I was too cheap to reincorporate. That's the funny answer. The real answer, though, is actually that we wanted to keep the term moment in there, even though it had more relations to moment meditate than moment energy, is because it reminds the four co founders where we started, which is our care and love for mental health, making sure that our team members and ourselves take care of ourselves. That's why here we really encourage, healthy body, healthy mind. We go on socials. Tomorrow we're going on a biking social, biking around the seawall at Stanley Park together. We go on 5 day, 4 night backpacking trips all together with the team, but also oftentimes with just the co-founders. And the reason why we do that is because it reminds us, yes, we are coworkers, and anytime to say you're married to your co-founders, but in reality, when you're on these 5 day, 4 night hikes, maybe day one, although you're cognizant and you're trying to not talk about business, you will most likely talk about business. But from day two, three, four, and five, you can't action on anything because you're literally in the grizzly bear country, and you have no reception. So those are the moments where you rebuild your friendship and your relationship with your co-founders and your team members, not just from a professional setting, but actually from an interpersonal setting too. So that those features are what also builds out the culture. And one last part is, we have essentially company dinners together weekly, and oftentimes we actually all love to eat together as well because just from a fundamental village type standpoint, we think breaking bread with one another is so important because that's when even when you were around a fire back in the day in the village, that is when you have those deeper interpersonal connections and conversations.
Sure. Yeah. One of the main posts of the podcast, the CBC, is to help other co-founders built businesses to share things that are working and things that come up. So many different ways you can build a business. I'm really fascinated to hear the way that you go forward energy so quickly to this point today. And so just going back to those early days when you were setting the key objectives in the plans, where did culture fit into that? 'Cause a lot of the time it's maybe generating revenue or product based. But for you, where did subculture rank in on list of priorities?
Super high. Um, we source every team member predominantly through culture, like how we typically interview in general. And everybody can go and create their own interview process. It took us many years to develop this, but you know, we have many cultural screens. So historically, it actually been myself or Gabe who would call for the first 15 minutes. Every single interested candidate that we're interested in it, right? And the first thing I'd say is thank you so much. Like, hi, I'm Eddie, co-founder and CEO at Moment Energy. Usually people are taken aback a little bit, like, oh my God, why did this just call me? But the first thing I like to start off with is just like thank you for even being interested in Moment Energy. And then I continue and they're like, hey, like, would love to learn a little bit more about you. Oftentimes, accidentally, I need to probably be more descriptive because they then rattle off their resume. And then my next question is like, so do you like play sports or what are some of your hobbies? And then they realize, uh-oh, like, right, this is actually one of those type of interviews. And we're just trying to meet each other um, as a human to human, right? And once we sense that there's a cultural fit, of course, now Aaron actually takes a lot of that as well. So as you scale, it is so important to do it yourself. And then, of course, as you get into larger scale, you're going to need help overall. But once it checks our cultural box, that is when we move it to the technical screen. So the technical screen is within our entire, you'll meet, like if you're an electrical engineer, you'll meet the entire electrical team from the hiring manager, including oftentimes our CTO, if this is an engineering role. Um, and we say like, hey, yeah, it's 45 minutes of competency, but at the same time, it's actually another 15 minutes of um, just getting to know each other. And often say like, don't just constantly be the ones asking them questions. It's a two-way street, right? Like in the end, they a person will spend more time with their coworker than they will their waking hours with their coworker than with their own spouse. So, like, you probably want them to understand what Moment Energy's culture is like as well, and make sure there's alignment. Um, so from there, we then have we have a very comprehensive set of questions, both on culture as well as on the technical end. But even from myself on the gut check, stolen this a little bit from Netflix is, you know, sometimes on the gut check is like, would you want to have dinner with them? Like, would you want to hang out with them? Right. That is a really good sense of is there a cultural fit here or not? That's not an official question in our process, but like that is something that I keep in the back of my head personally. And then finally, after technical side, like wow, everything looks amazing, then it goes back to the co-founders. And to this day, every single interview and every single person that works here still has to meet all four co-founders. We all take an hour of our time together. Our schedules are pretty wild, but we'll make the time no matter what. We do it in person as much as possible, at least. We have the person come out and we just meet them. Again, it's another 45 minutes of only pure culture questions, no technical questions whatsoever. And then, of course, another 15 minutes of them asking us questions. Um, and end to end, I think, like, if any candidate goes through our process, they feel like culture matters a lot. And I think the key is, you know, and I've said this more recently, more actively, but I've been saying it for years, which is I specifically have a no asshole policy. I don't care if you are the top number one in your field, but then you treat everybody else like shit. There are many other companies who are quite famous, let's just say, that had done that, right? And that's just no way to be treating another human, right? So by creating a culture where you feel like you can be candid with one another, because being candid and upfront is actually a blessing, not a curse.
Sure.
Um, and then at the same time, though, while being candid and not being an asshole, those are skills that are very important. And if they're then finally really passionate about the moment energy mission, um, then we believe that maybe you're not, the world's expert, but you can grow to become the world's expert. Maybe you're 90% of the way there. And I believe that you can get to 110%, even better than those other players because you're just so passionate about it. So those are the things that we typically pull for culture. Um, and there's a ton of candidates that we've interviewed where on paper and even on the technical side, they've knocked it out of the park, but we shut them down based on the culture side. Um, the honest answer is what we're trying to learn though is now that we're 80 over eight, oh, another, yeah. Every month we onboard like another 10 is so almost 90 at this point. Um, it might not be sustainable for the four co-founders to be in every single interview, but as of today, we're still doing it. And at the very least, it shows our appreciation. Hopefully, it shows our appreciation that this candidate is taking the time to come out and meet with us, and we want uh, us to them to feel the same way that we are more than happy to take time out in our schedules to hang out with them.
It's good. It's good as you say, it might get to a point where it becomes just too much. But I guess like anything in business, you evolve over time.
Yeah.
Mention the culture. Since then, have you seen it evolve? Have you purposefully made it evolve, or has it happened naturally?
Yeah, great question. Like at Moment, I think one amazing stat is in the entire history of Moment Energy, only maybe three people have ever left Moment, like quit. Uh, um, which I think is incredible. Like our churn and turnover rate has been extremely low, and I think it has to do with the great culture here at Moment. Um, and like, the you actually might ask like, "Oh, who were the 3?" And I can't I'm not gonna name them. But actually, like, most of them were, "Hey, I want a degree in biology. I'm gonna go back to school and get my master's there." And we're like, "Well, evidently, I can't provide you a degree in biology." And we're actually, like, so excited for them to start their next journey. So, building that culture is really helpful because, uh retention is really important when it comes to like building your business. There are whole rabbit holes I can go talk about, like the semiconductor industry. They say that they need to retain people for 20 years because, unlike especially in the US, like in the Bay Area, there's turnover every 2 years, and you can never be in full expert at something and retain that high technical knowledge for that short of a time. Um, and again, that's why semiconductor companies are here in North America. But regardless, in terms of like how the culture has shifted over time, I'd say in the end, it's just become a little bit more scalable. Scalable in the sense that at first it was the four co-founders that really championed the values, right? Sustainability, ownership, treating others with respect, customer centric and focused, and safety. But what we also say to each and every team member is that this business is yours. And what I've really felt is that every single member at Moment really feels like the business, Moment Energy, is their home. And we empower every member to suggest from an intern all the way to the longest standing of full time and senior to suggest any great ideas to improve the culture. Um, and that's again, I think that's why we've been getting amazing candidates that are just genuine, nice people that really care about climate, really care about energy. Um, but at the same time, like I think that's why we historically have been so protective of the culture as well. Because we feel that if we let somebody that's bad for the culture into the company, then it really drags everybody else down in terms of the morale and how they are driven from moment energy.
Yeah. It's one thing to say, we welcome any ideas, please come and talk to us, and we'll definitely integrate the versus that actually happen in practice, because that all depends on how they feel. Like the onboarding training, for example, hopefully the way in which you speak or present the company, present yourself, people feel comfortable to speak to you. Say, Eddie, I've got a great idea. So yeah, I think many companies will have that. The difference is, does it happen in practice? So that's pretty unique. Before we go on to the future and what's next, and one final question, which something I've been impressed about with Moment Energy, is how you've been able to attract people through some of the bigger players.
Yeah.
So from really established companies like Tesla,
Yeah.
for example. Why do you think that is? And if you're in if you're in their shoes, how would you assess or evaluate the risk versus reward of joining a smaller entity or a younger entity like Webton?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think the I think it goes back to culture, right? The unfortunate fact is, and there's a typical saying in the Bay Area, which is there's a lot of, there are more people who were ex Tesla than there were people on Tesla. And, what an innovative company, like what an amazing company that they've built from nothing to where they are today. But at the same time, and like, a lot of people have left. Um, Now, I think they're at a certain scale where they can have turnover and churn, right? They oftentimes, when you join a company like a Tesla, you get thrown at a problem for 2 full years, you get massively burnt out, and then you move on. And the detriment, unfortunately, is that individual goes through massive burnout, um, which, when we go back to mental health, is really negative for the entire industry. But the potential benefit and the reality is that, it has inspired amazing, great companies as well. For example, of course, our CTO is ex Teslas as well. And, um, I think the pivot from, uh, either a Tesla or any other Bay Area massive company, there are 10 of them there, is actually a typical thing that happens, which is usually you get really comfortable. Maybe not Tesla, but the other companies, you get really comfortable. And you start realizing and asking yourselves, is my life, yes, I make a lot of money, but is my life really just about changing the color of this one icon on a mobile app for the rest of my life? Um, and most people, uh, luckily say no, and then they take more risk. And of course, maybe they have now developed a good base of finances where they can take more risk. Ideally, they join a startup. And what we say is, it's so much more impactful, and especially the members who've quit Tesla, quit these other companies as well, where maybe they don't align with the ethos of the leadership or they don't align with um, what they're doing anymore, is that it's so much more impactful to build things with your hands, and go and deliver the cheapest electron in an altruistic way to the end customer. Um, for us, the main thing that we drive for, of course, the two key metrics, um, is always going to be, revenue and projects deployed, which we're leaders in. But ultimately, it's less so actually about the ultimate numbers. It's more so about the impact. Because by sending our engineers out to a remote community where they had little to no power, and because we deploy batteries, that is where they see their impact being made. Um, and there's so much work to be done where, I think that's what really helps with retention on that moment energy, but also just like feeling a sense of purpose when it comes to a lot of our work, as well. Now, at moment, we feel very fortunate as we continue scaling. Um, we have literally the best talent. Like, I always love to brag about our entire team. Again, a lot of great automakers like Tesla, and Honda, and whatnot, all and Toyota have all joined us. But at the same time, amazing associations like the leader of fire safety at NASA,
Yes. Yeah.
right? Picking out batteries, testing over 200,000 batteries, uh, to then find the highest performing yet safest battery to put into the Orion vehicle and send some of our heroes around the moon for the Artemis 2 missions. That is incredible. And that's why we lead safety in the entire industry, because we have him and we have a whole team on that. Um,
And he's
no,
here.
sorry?
And he's here.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's incredible. And then, the leader of all lithium-ion battery research also works here as well. Um, and, this is a lot, I think, in benefit of, unfortunately, what's happening, a benefit to Moment Energy, but unfortunately what's happening down in the US. I think a lot of amazing talent has decided to leave companies like Tesla again. Unfortunately, when consumers are lighting your cars on fire, it's a little scary for engineers. You start asking yourselves, "Am I really working for the best company in the world?" Um, and or unfortunately, just like a lot of focuses around industry has changed as well, in different markets, so that enabled them to come and join our company. Regardless, I think what we continually focus on is how do we continue to attract the best talent in the world. And usually what we say is the best talent brings on more of the world's best talent, because you always want to work with the best team in the world, which we have at first.
Yes. It's infectious. It's like you said before about the policy you have. If that's also toxic, if you have a bad member of the team in there who isn't doing Canada the correct way and being an asshole, as you mentioned, uh, it's infectious. It spreads. So does positive people, the best people. People want to join them. They want to like have momentum. So,
Yeah.
oh, that's
So sometimes actually it's like Stockholm syndrome as well.
yeah, true.
Like some of our members,
Very conscious of that.
especially coming from let's just say more historically not great cultured companies, have told us like you guys need to yell at us more. And we're like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And then they tell us stories about how when they were interns, the VPs, they're just giving data, right? It's not even work related. It's not like their work quality relation. It's just gave me a task. I went to grab the data. I gave you the data. Unfortunately, you don't like the data. And they would just get yelled at. Like these poor students would get yelled at for an entire hour by VPs of these pretty big companies. Um, and, you know, yeah, that is just something that's just a nightmare to me. Like I would never ever want to have founded a culture like that. Um, and I hope nobody on my team ever experiences that. And that's what kind of drives us to try to build the best culture in the world.
So what's next? You've obviously got 8 people. We've got the new facility now. So yeah, what's next, and what do you envisage being your biggest challenges for beers?
Yeah, great question. Um, yeah, we've just been deploying like crazy. We're actually decently quiet about our deployments compared to a lot of others, but we've been deploying for the past 6 years commercially. We don't own the projects ourselves. They all go to paying customer where they're recycled once a day, if not up to 5 times a day. Um, so we build essentially, you know, the largest battery data set in the world, which enables us to repurpose any battery. Um, we have access to essentially all of them. Um, we make sure that these batteries don't end up in landfills. And the key is, unfortunately, recycling is just not profitable. You know, the recyclers had told everybody they were for the past 5 years. They raised billions of dollars, and majority of them are all bankrupt. And which is actually quite terrible for the entire industry, because I wrote in my bylaws I would never ever landfill a battery. So until recycling is profitable, we're gonna still have to pay for battery recycling. But you know, we see that the supply of batteries continue to grow with Moment's current facility here, the Megafactory producing, as well as our Texas Gigafactory as well, which is coming up next. You know, we're only producing in the single digits of gigawatt hours a year, while already there would be 953 gigawatt hours in the next coming years, right? And that number and graph continues to go up from there. So we would still only be, you know, repurposing essentially less than a percent, unless we continue to scale. Now we see this as an opportunity, but if you know moment energy didn't exist, unfortunately most of these batteries would end up in landfills. Uh, so we have a great sense of urgency. That's why we built this facility in 6 weeks. Uh, you know, while others, unfortunately, are still taking years to stand up their battery cell manufacturing plant to recycling plants as well. Instead, you know, we wanted to show everybody that we can do this in 6 weeks, because there is a sense of urgency where every single day that we are not building and deploying more and more volumes of batteries, is another day where we can't reach the ones in need. Uh, and those ones in needs are not just, you know, data centers and whatnot. It's actually critical infrastructure like hospitals, airports, you know, members in South America and Africa where they don't even have a grid, right? So we need to continue scaling, and that most likely will be more and more gigafactories, which we hope to announce soon.
Very exciting. Very exciting. Um, and for the final question, what are the biggest lessons you've learned so far, and would you do anything differently?
Great question. I think like When you started this whole conversation and talking about how fast everything was, like I'm constantly in the state of, wow, I can't believe we're here already. And I can't believe it's already been 6 years. To also, man, we need to move so much quicker.
Yeah.
Not just moment energy, but as an entire industry, we all need to move so much quicker because there's such a massive environmental problem, but also a grid problem that we need to be solving. Consumers, their energy prices are continuing to rise regardless of data centers. Yes, with data centers, but two is even installing AC units, air conditioning units right at home because most homes actually across North America don't have them. But now summers are getting hotter and winters are getting colder. Right. As we try to electrify, the grid is not suited to even install EV charging stations. Or again, why we deploy hospitals is because as we modernize technology within a hospital, it draws too much power and we get brownouts, which get dangerous as well. So um, there's a massive sense of urgency for us, but I'd say like starting moment, uh, we reflect on this from time to time, which is like I think it's what I've realized, and this was not recent. This is probably about 3 years ago. Is the superpower of a founder is typically that one is we underestimate how hard something is going to be, and then we have memories of a goldfish. So so like we underestimate as in, when we started Moment Energy in a garage, we're like, ah, this is gonna be great. Like we already built and deployed one of our like systems, right? It's just gonna be like this forever. That's gonna be great. And then we learned, you need certification. You need to make sure you're safe because we want to keep everybody ourselves as a company and team members, but also our customers safe from any uh, battery fire event, for example. We actually needed to do battery testing and onshore all of that into, building one of North America's largest battery testing facilities in the world, which we did a couple years ago already. Um, we need to understand supply chains. We need to actually go and create multiple facilities, right? Like everything started cascading where we have now taken on more and more scope as needed. I think we grew at a really great pace as well. But we underestimate how hard it's going to be. But because of that underestimation, it makes us fearless when it comes to going to do the thing versus, being stagnant and say like, oh man, that sounds really hard. I don't want to do that at all. We will always tackle the problem. Then we solve the problem. And when we solve the problem, then we just forget how hard it was. And we look at the next problem. We're like, oh, it's probably not going to be that hard again. And then we just keep rinse and repeat. So,
Sure.
um, especially because of the audience, there's a lot of other like business owners or members trying to start their own businesses as well. You know, I think my advice would be, it's going to feel hard. Um, but if it wasn't hard, you're probably not working on something innovative.
Yeah.
So if anything, it's going to feel hard. It's going to feel grueling. It's going to feel terrible today. But then once you're finally out of the trenches and you look back at that problem that you just solved, you'll actually miss the times that it was hard.
Yeah.
Um, because those were the most fun parts about building the business.
Yeah. Embrace it. Say time. I imagine meditation has helped so much over these years. There's so many crazy things that be going on. Boy, you can't always affect the things that happen, but you can affect how you behave to it or react to it. So meditation helps close with that. So
Yeah, absolutely.
it's good. Final question.
Mhm.
Same one for every guest. For anybody who's building a business out there, what be your best piece of advice?
I'd say my best piece of advice would be to find the best co-founders in the world to work with. Um, People joke about it, but ultimately it comes down to not being a joke, which is you are married to your co-founders. Um, we at moment we say employees don't have to love each other, but they should like each other, right? And to create a great culture. I think with your co-founders, you kind of have to love each other. Like I just got married, and quite honestly, it's like sometimes it feels like it's my second marriage because I got married to three other people initially, which was great because then like it built helped me build the skills of creating a healthy, actual marriage to my wife. But ultimately it goes back to finding the people, either be a one other co-founder, two other co-founders, in my case, three other co-founders, where you implicitly just trust, right? You if you're having a down day, you have those people to go talk to. And even if they can't solve that problem, they know exactly what you're talking about, right? Ultimately, if you talk to your parents about it, and even if you talk to your actual spouse about it, they won't understand the hardships about that you're going through. But your co-founders will, because they're actually living the same problems as you. And you both need to solve this problem to make this entire company work, right? And what I found is, especially at early stages, and this is again why we decided to pivot from Moment Meditate and we stayed together to do Moment Energy rather than going back to Tesla or nuclear energy research or Apple or wherever, is because we knew that we had built that trust for 6 years. Um, and it becomes a lot less lonely overall. Like I know a lot of solo founders, uh, and they hit me up every couple weeks and say like, Eddie, I've been working these 90, 100 week hours. I don't know how to do this. Like, how do you do this? And like, yeah, like I work the same amount, but it's because I could trust and offload, some of the parts that I'm not good at to some of my other co-founders and vice versa. They can offload some of the things that they're not good at to me. So we know, even from the core of the business, all of us are working 100 plus hours a week into just building this business, and it doesn't feel lonely versus imagining yourself as a single founder. You are working that hard, but it is quite honestly not fair to ask your team members to constantly do that all the time. Our team members do that actually most of the time.
If like an owner, I guess.
Yeah, but ultimately, it is our business, right? And we need to make sure, like from my side, when I see my team members working, 6 weeks of 100-hour weeks, it is my responsibility to tell them to stop and be like, hey, you need to recuperate. Like, I really appreciate this, and the mission really appreciates this, but this is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
So, that is something where I can take them. Uh, uh, that is my responsibility. Versus a co-founder, of course, we remind ourselves that all the time. But at the same time, during those days when I'm feeling tired, I know that there are other people who are working equally as hard as me.
Yeah. Well, Eddie, I think that's a wrap. Thank you. Thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank
It's
you.
been obviously an amazing journey to share that story.
Thanks for
Coming,
coming.
for having me here, and yeah, to see this place.
Yeah, it's a far hop.
Yeah. Good luck for the next chapter, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for